to the Bayview Podcast with hosts Andrew Clark and Chris Emery. This is designed to be a discussion on all things life and faith. We hope this serves as a weekly resource and encouragement to you.
What is up, Bayview? It's your host, Andrew, joined as always by Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Hello, everybody out there in Bayview Podcast land.
Yeah.
Appreciate you listening. We really do enjoy the conversations we have with so many of you that just kind of encourage us, let us know that you're enjoying and appreciating what we're doing here. From the very beginning, it was like, hey, just a resource, just something to help you along that maybe is a little pick-me-up during the week or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, I mean, obviously, I feel like you and I, we've got a lot out of these discussions so far, just the handful we've done. But, yeah, if there was no one listening, it would just kind of be us talking in a room with Brock sitting in the corner quietly.
Yeah, Brock is, he's the rarely recognized producer of the Bayview Podcast, and he really is the one that makes all this work. Like you and I, we sit here and we play on our phones and we drink our coffee or water and we crack jokes while Brock is feverishly working behind the scenes until the on-air light comes on, and then we get serious and act like it's all about us, and we've been killing it this whole time. And, yeah, a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, without Brock. And
without Brock, we're in trouble.
He had a ton of help from Jeremy and those two guys. But yeah, Brock just has been killing it for it. And so, but no, we truly appreciate those of you who've been listening and really do hope this has been a resource. And that was kind of why I do this. And that was that idea. And so, well, hey, we kind of set it up an episode or so ago talking about spiritual disciplines and the why and kind of what is a spiritual discipline and why it's worth kind of leaning into and even having this discussion. And so our hope with the next handful is to really now kind of dive deeper one by one into these different disciplines. So the one we want to talk about today is rest, and rest has REST has all these different maybe definitions, or I think there's a handful of things that can fall underneath it. Things like actual rest, like to slow down, to stop. The word Sabbath is a big word connected, especially in the church world, connected to rest, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Silence, solitude. We throw out that word meditation. Like there's so much that comes with this word. It's kind of a heavy but really worthwhile word, and something that when I think rest is really taken as a spiritual discipline and really becomes part of your life, and I do believe we're talking about something deeper than just like laying your head down on your pillow at night, but to truly take a day or take a specific set of time in which you're actually going to rest. There's a big exhale. There's a big just like stopping, maybe resetting is a good word too. But yeah, what is for you, like that word? What does that word mean? What does it look like? Maybe, we can even start maybe the discussion. Let's talk about that word Sabbath, but I don't know what for rest. Like,
I think you hit it well, and that is that rest. It's a very big word. There's a lot of different caveats and ways it is applied to our lives, and but I think it still all carries the same. I guess for lack of a better term, maybe the same imagery or the same idea. Like, so the moment you said that word, I instantly thought of what is probably going on right here on the other side of the facility. Our studios here at Bayview Church, we have a large preschool daycare. And as we are recording right now, it is smack smack dab in the middle of quiet time or nap time or rest time. So if we were to walk down to one of the younger rooms, the lights are going to be off. It's going to be dark in the hallways. There's going to be soft music playing, and there's going to be silence. And there's these little kids that are laying on these cool little mats that I wish they made in adult sizes, and they're resting. And there's just something about it. I don't know how it is for you. I walk down the hall during this time of the day. It's just like,
Yeah.
like I whisper, but not because I don't want to wake kids up, because you just feel like you're supposed to, because there's a quietness to it.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that imagery and that experience is something that is not just important for children. I think as a discipline, it's something that's incredibly important for us as followers of Jesus. We live in a very busy world. We live very busy lives. We are all classically overscheduled.
Yeah.
Our kids are overscheduled. You still work with students a lot.
Yep.
You're battling students that are busier than most adults should be.
Yeah.
You know, how sad is it when, there's a freshman in high school has to have their calendar on their phone active so they can keep track of all of their things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the world we live in.
Yep.
Call it the rat race, call it whatever you want, and we're all sucked into it. We all contribute to it. And so in the middle of all of this, God gives us this call to rest. And I think, once again, we are exposed to the fact that God knew exactly how this was all going to play out. He knew how we are and were. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, they're going to be a mess. Yeah. So the topic of rest, man, it's given to us pretty early on in Scripture.
Yeah.
And so it's actually found right here in Genesis chapter 2. Says, starting in verse 2, it says, on the seventh day, God finished his work of creation. So he rested from all his work, and God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was the day he rested from all his work of creation.
Yeah.
So now we're all of a sudden, right out of the gate, chapter 2 of the Bible, there's two things. We're called to rest as God rested, and then he deemed the seventh day the holy day because it's the day he showed us how to rest. I think that's a super interesting connection.
Yeah.
It's holy because of what God was showing us. He was showing us how to stop.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. And so what we're not going to do is we're not going to dive, unless you really want to, we're not going to dive into what's the actual Sabbath day.
Sure.
We're not going to get that discussion of it. I mean, I think most biblical scholars agree that it was Saturday probably.
Yep.
But, I mean, for you and I as pastors, our Sabbath is a different day anyway.
Yep.
Like our Sabbath is kind of Mondays.
Yeah, that's a good point.
In a lot of ways. So,
that's a good point.
So we won't get into the weeds of all of that, but we're going to talk about rest, how it works as a discipline, maybe how it looks within the confines of the Sabbath, what that actually means, and how that is applied to our lives.
Yeah.
And, so that's kind of, I think, where we can go with it.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because, I mean, realistically, the idea of Sabbath, the idea of rest, like, it's, I mean, maybe you could call it like almost like the climax of creation. Like, it was like that God stopped and looked around and said, it is good. And then he's like, okay, I need to rest. I need to stop. The work is finished. And so, it really does set up for us like that biblical principle, that spiritual discipline of slowing down, of taking time to not pick up the tool or to do whatever it is that is your normal maybe job or normal routine, normal work, and to rest. And that's honestly probably easier said than done for a lot of people.
It is, and I think that one of the things I just kind of dawned on me in that vein as I'm looking at this passage in Genesis 2, it's not that God got tired. I don't think God gets tired. I think the rest for him, stop and rest, it's so he can enjoy.
Yeah.
Enjoy what he had worked hard at for those other 6 days.
Yep.
So it's interesting that you said that a lot of people struggle to rest. They struggle to stop. Man, you need to figure out why you don't enjoy that.
Yeah.
It's not doing it just so I can say I did it.
Yep.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, first, in no way are we talking about, like, go be lazy, go, take your time, do this or that. Like, there is something to actually, like, your best work for a lot of people comes after that rest, after that time of actually stepping away and to walk away from something and catch your breath or whatever it is, do something else, and then when you come back to it, you almost come back with a clearer mind and more appreciation for what it is that you are doing.
Absolutely.
When it's just go, 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 which is exactly what you said life is now, especially with our phones and with internet and with everything. It's just go, 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 always connected, always around others, whether we are alone in our room or not. Like there's always this sense of just I don't know if you have that, like there's that sense of just like, man, I can't stop.
Right.
Like if I stop, if I slow down, the rat race is going to pass me by. I'm going to miss my opportunity. You know, the entrepreneurial mindset,
fear of missing out.
Yep,
You got
FOMO,
some
like
mad FOMO raging.
it is, and it's. I think it's really hindered the ability to actually stop and rest, to stop and appreciate what is actually life and what's going on.
And I think it has maybe even allowed us to dismiss that this isn't a suggestion. As we'll look at the progression of the Sabbath and this command, this is a command.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, like when we refuse to do it and we're intentionally not doing it, which a lot of us are intentionally not doing it, whether you want to admit or not, well, that's disobeying God.
Yeah.
So now it's like, wait a second, are you saying that's a sin? Well, I'm just saying that when you disobey God, it's sinful. Yeah. And so I think we have to recognize that's the level that God presents this to us in His Word. Yeah. And I think that the way we apply it is actually to our great benefit.
Yeah.
All right, real quick then, what, aside from the biblical aspect of everything, which we'll touch on, what are just some things randomly maybe that, hey, these are the things that I do that just I enjoy, they bring me rest. What are the enjoyable, restful things that you do in your life?
What's interesting is and we talked off air, and I'll let you touch base more on it when here in a minute, but like it's doing things differently than I think you would normally do them. Like actually like seeking out something that's not the norm. So like I enjoy things like working out, being active, being around people, doing all that, but I'm also a natural introvert, and so like that time alone, like that kind of stuff is really, really big. So when you ask about things that are like now considered restful, now as a dad of a toddler and an 18-month-old, like there's not a ton of restful moments. Maybe when they go to bed, there's like this deep exhale that happens between my wife and I. But things that I've found that have given me rest is running, but not running for a race or not running for a time, but actually just to go out and to like more or less go for a jog of some sort, but like that form of exercise compared to lifting weights or things like that. So something that's more active, but active in the sense of I'm just doing something. That's become incredibly restful. Reading has become incredibly restful, and it's not something I get to do necessarily all the day or every day or all the time. And then for my wife and I, like going on walks with our kids, like pushing them in the car. I think I've mentioned this on past episodes. Like there's something really like resetting about that time together. And then I really enjoy like some form of cooking or baking or like things that the way I would say it is this: things that I don't have to put a timer on. Like things done, all those things I could do in a day, but I would probably do them under a time crunch or in a time limit. So when I don't have to put the timer on it, like, and I can just kind of do it at my own pace or in my own way, like those things have become really, really restful. And really, really like, I like the word resetting, like very just like, okay, like I've peaked, and now we've kind of come back down to that baseline. And I feel like let's rev it back up. Let's see what we can go do. Let's go after it again.
Good.
So those are a handful of things that come to mind right away.
But that's important because I think that kind of creating the baseline of not just the individual things we do for rest, but what the result is, because that's kind of what we're getting at is like, all right, as a spiritual discipline, what's the goal of spiritual rest?
Yeah.
but we have to look at it first of all through that layer of what do we just do naturally right now to just find rest, just to unplug. One of the challenges that you and I share is, being pastors, is that we have to be on, quote unquote, on a lot.
Yeah.
When we're around people, we have to be fully engaged, available, and that's awesome. I consider that just a pure privilege and joy in being able to be that. But it is giving.
Yeah.
And when we go in public, live in a fishbowl, so to speak, a bit. Give. So rest is very important for us.
Yeah.
And different forms. For me, it kind of depends on the season too.
Sure.
Living in northern Michigan, there's things that I love to do in the summer that I find golf incredibly restful. That's just such a great thing for me, for my soul, for my heart, for my body. There's something about it. I can detach from the work, from the grind. But at the same time, I love just plopping down on the couch and watching a good movie with my wife.
Yeah.
I just love sitting down and just being like, let's get some popcorn or some snacks, and let's just close the blinds. And it's probably one of the cooler parts. Probably for me, one of the more beneficial parts of winters here is that, one, we're kind of forced to do that more.
Yep.
But we also, it gets dark so early in the winter here.
Yeah.
If you're not from northern Michigan, it stays daylight in the summer to 10 p.m. at the peak. At 10 p.m. at night in the middle of the summer, it's still pretty light out.
Yeah, you can see.
You can see just fine. I've finished a round of golf at 10 p.m. before.
Yeah.
But in the wintertime, our days are very short, and so it's dark somewhere just after lunch.
No exaggeration, probably 5:30 though, for sure.
Oh, without a doubt. 4:45 at the shortest. The winter solstice, it's 4:45 and it's headlights on.
Yeah.
And but it's good if you want to sit down and watch a movie and there's a blizzard blowing outside. There's nothing else you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so I find those moments, morning cups of coffee in the silence. It's interesting because I think I'm like you. I love people. I love being around people. It doesn't drain me. It does give me energy, but I would not label myself a true extrovert by any stretch.
Yeah.
I really am a bit of an introvert in the fact I love just my me time, just quiet. I think maybe that's one of the benefits of being an early riser is that I'm the only one up in my house. I got a couple hours sometimes.
Yeah.
Just me, some coffee, chill.
Yeah.
Man, I'm fired up. I'm ready to roll.
That's awesome.
By 7 p.m., my juices are flowing, and my wife is waking up, and she is not wanting to talk, and I'm ready to talk. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good mix.
She needs the hours you just had. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think those are all things about rest that I don't think we have to convince anybody that rest is important.
Yeah.
Maybe you're listening now and you're like, well, I don't sleep very good. Well, you know how that feels. You know what that feels to you physically. You lack rest, and you want rest. You want to sleep.
Yeah.
Maybe you've been going 100 miles an hour for a long time, and you need a break.
Mm.
You know your body. You know your mind. You're needing that.
Yeah.
We are built for rest.
Yeah. And there's a difference between, and this is something my wife and I talk a lot about because I'm by no stretch a gamer or a video game player, things like that. I'll do it every once in a while with my brother or some friends, and this is not a knock in that direction by any means, but rest is not just mind numbing.
Correct.
And you can mind numb in many different ways. And I only use video games because that's just what the example my wife would use. But there's maybe some restful aspects to it, but it's if you're doing something just to kind of quote unquote disconnect or just to numb for a minute, and that there's a wide range of stuff there. We're not talking about that kind of rest, because hopefully with the rest you're experiencing, like we said, you're kind of coming back down to more of a baseline, more of a refreshed, ready to roll, compared to just oh, I shut it off for a minute, now I'm ready to go again.
Right.
And I do think there's a nuance there of like you said, God wasn't tired. He was just kind of he was taking that necessary break, relishing in the moment, being present. That's a huge thing that I think is, if you're not napping or sleeping, which can be much part of your rest, there's a presence, some words that you'd use are silence or solitude, and those moments are special and important because you're present, because you're actually fully like mentally processing through like, I'm just being in the moment right now.
Yeah.
It's like I was saying, like going for that run or baking in the kitchen or reading that book. It's like when there's no timer attached. It's like I'm just getting to be here. I think of, I had all these images flash in my head of either sitting on a bonfire with a group of friends, not alone, but with a group of friends, or sitting in our basement watching a movie with a group of friends. And like there was just something about like doing everything I could to be present in that moment.
Absolutely.
And I really think for you and I, like when it comes to that relationship with God, like there is an importance and a necessity to being present. And when you stop, right, and you take the deep breath and the exhale happens and you find yourself in a silent state or a state of solitude or truly a state of rest, like there's a presence that can be, I believe, experienced.
Yeah.
And that would, I think, hopefully is the true idea. I mean, Jesus says in Matthew, "Come to me, all who are weary and in need of rest." Like there's a longing on his end that you would find rest in him, and that comes from truly being present with him.
Absolutely. So before we dive into that, let's do this real quick. Let's kind of go ahead and do a preemptive strike, because if you're listening, there's a good chance you've already got your defenses up and you're already formulating all the reasons why you're the exception.
Yeah.
All the reasons why. I hear you, I hear God, but here you don't understand. You don't get it.
Yep.
And so what are some excuses that maybe are right around people's heads right now?
I have young kids, or I have,
good.
There's no, I can never stop.
Yep.
I think there's a sense that if I don't do it, who will? And that tends to really drive a lot of people to not stop.
Yep. I've got to make more money.
Got to make more money. Yep. Definitely the time one. Like I just don't have time.
Yep.
It's never been important. So, or I've made it this far without it. Like some of that kind of stuff, I think is a potential excuse.
Yep. People are counting on me. I've got clients. I mean, I know we can go on and on and on. I think maybe what I think I'm getting at, or we're getting at, is there's really not any legitimate excuse that you can come to God and say, okay, God, I see what you did here in creation. I'm sure creating all creation was a big task. I'm sure that took a lot out of you. And I appreciate that you wanted to rest on the seventh day. But I've got a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit, or maybe it's right now. Like, I do think there is something to. We're not necessarily talking. I mean, we're not talking like that full 24-hour window,
right?
As much as we're talking about, for some it might be sun up to sundown on a day. We were talking off air. There's John Mark Comer's book where he the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, that was a big popular book the last couple of years, and we have it at our resource center, and it is a highly recommended book, and he really talks about the idea of slowing down and not being so hurried. But like his family celebrates Sabbath starting Friday night at dinner, and it ends by Saturday at dinner.
Yeah.
So a massive chunk though is spent sleeping.
Wow.
It's during the night.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? They wake up in the morning and their biggest form of Sabbathing is to put the phones away. So they're essentially completely disconnected. But we're not talking about this like throw it all away, and that's the only way you can actually rest in Sabbath.
Right.
I know some individuals who they'll wake up on a Saturday morning, and that first cup of coffee is when their Sabbath starts, and when they sit down for dinner that Saturday night, Sabbath ends basically. Then they're going to pop up the phone and check any emails or stuff like that. But it's just kind of that window. It really is a time set aside that is different than the rest, that is truly focused on slowing down, stopping, resting.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think that is kind of a good division between, one topic, two different sides of it. One, let's talk about what is the Sabbath biblically? How does that look? What does that look like applied to our lives? But then what are the other areas where rest is part of our regular discipline, our regular rhythms as well? The idea of Sabbath obviously created there in Genesis chapter 2. repeated again in Exodus 16. This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow will be a day of complete rest, a holy Sabbath day set apart for the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you see that word set apart or those words set apart, it can be interchanged with the word holy.
Yeah.
Because the word holy literally means that, to be set apart for the Lord, but to be set apart completely different. So when we're called to be holy, we're called to be different and set apart from the world that lacks God. Again, Exodus 20, getting into more of the 10 Commandments, but it does say this: you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work,
Mm-hmm.
but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. So I think it's important. We'll come back to that because, you got 6 days to do all this.
Yep.
Seventh day needs to be different.
Yep.
Continues on, Exodus 31, keep the Sabbath holy, a day for him. And so obviously we see this clearly that in the Old Testament, but then we have this 400 years of silence between the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Yep.
So 400 years where, as far as we can tell in recorded, history, God didn't really speak, which is really, that's kind of hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
So there's no new declarations, commandments, no new prophets or anything. 400 years. In that time, humans do what humans do. We took something really, really good, and out of probably originally good motives, we made it something it was never meant to be.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden we have this time where all these hundreds of laws are written to help people follow this law.
Mm.
But now it's become legalistic.
Yep.
Now we've got this scribal law, the Jewish law of Sabbath,
Yep.
which was an incredible burden, an incredible overwhelming thing. I've got this one. This is just one law about it. One of the laws was don't carry a burden on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
But that's probably broad. So they're like, okay, let's go one step further. Let's make sure we all understand what a burden is. A burden is food equal in weight to a dried fig, enough wine for mixing in a goblet, milk enough for one swallow, honey enough to put upon a wound, oil enough to anoint a smaller member, water enough to moisten an eye salve, paper enough to write a customs house notice upon ink, or enough ink to write 2 letters of the alphabet, or a reed enough to make a pen. That's just under the wire. So those are all things. Anything more than that is a burden. So now we're going to follow.
Trinkets.
So we're going to follow these,
Yeah.
and there's hundreds more,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to live to the letter of the law.
Yeah.
I know for me growing up, child of the '80s, I love what the comedian Nate Bargatze said. He was his parents are '80s and '90s Christians, the most Christian you could be.
Yeah.
And that's so true because we didn't go out to eat on Sundays. We didn't go to the movies on Sundays. We didn't play sports on Sundays. All these things. There was nothing restful about that.
Yeah.
It was intense. It was painful.
Yeah. There's a burden of the mind happening the whole time.
There's a burden the entire time.
Yeah. This
This is the environment that Jesus is introduced into. He comes in and, of course, says, I'm not here to abolish the law. I'm here to fulfill it. With what he's basically saying is like, listen, you may be following the letter of the law, but you have missed the heart of it entirely.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting idea that we can't dive into now, but it is possible to follow the letter of the law and still be disobedient. And so now he's saying, listen, let's break this down. And of course, then Jesus catches all this flack because he heals on Sunday. They pick figs on a Sunday, and he's very clear that, hey, it's not a sin to do good on the Sabbath. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's where we want to make sure we are helping you understand, like, this is not about the legalism of what you can and can't do.
Yeah. That's good.
In fact, I'd say if you're listening and you're an old school legalist, I would wager that you do things now on the Sabbath that you did not do 20 years ago on the Sabbath.
Sure. Yeah.
Why is that? Well, because you're following the letter of the law, not the heart of the law.
Yeah.
The heart of the law is this, is that there's a day where it's a restful day that is holy. It's set apart
Yeah.
in worship.
Mm.
That's the heart behind this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So you say all that, do you see it as, well, here's this, you enjoy mowing, right? You mow on a Sabbath, on your day that you would consider Sabbath, you go out and mow it. Like, that's like a work. Like, there's effort that's happening there. Like, so what is the difference between that and someone completing like a honey-do list and some of that kind of stuff? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is the...
Well, I mean, I guess maybe it may be different for everybody.
Yeah.
So when I say I enjoy mowing, so being a pastor, our day of rest kind of is different. Sunday's kind of a big work day.
Yep.
But still, most Sundays we get done here and we're home by 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
12:30, 1 o'clock, not too bad. And so we have the rest of that day. Thank goodness, long gone are the days of Sunday night church.
Yeah.
I don't know who was responsible for that. I have not done an ounce of reading on the history of Sunday night services.
Yep.
But let's be real.
Yep.
There was nothing restful about those.
Yep.
Nobody wanted to be there. If you attended a Saturday night service, you had to drag yourself off the couch like, oh, let's get ready for church.
Yep.
So we can go there and be there with a handful of people compared to Sunday morning. We can be there and listen and watch the pastor, who also does not want to be there, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's none, but I would say it's a very, very, very small percentage of pastors that were excited about a Sunday night service.
Yeah.
And you were getting a pretty last-minute thrown-together message that may or may not be
because that's a good clarification. We're not talking about like churches that do multiple services a day. We're talking like Sunday night.
Totally different church service.
It was a whole new service.
Whole new service.
Like, we're talking new message, new everything. And so I remember as a little kid just being, with my parents, and my dad was a pastor, so we'd have to go to it, and it was just always the most confusing thing. Because it was like, it's night, and we were just here all day. Like, why are we back here? I'm just going to run around upstairs the whole time that you guys are sitting down. Like, it was like the weirdest, like, as a child, I just never could comprehend why we were back.
There's nothing good about it. I mean, let's be real. Nothing. I mean, let's say you killed it on a Sunday morning and you want to invite people back to Sunday night. What you're saying is like, listen, we hit that nail on the head this morning, but come back tonight. You're going to see how bad it can be. Where you're going to see how pathetic this can look. Because that's every Sunday night service. There was not a Sunday... I don't remember a single Sunday night service like, man, we knocked that out of the park. So much better than Sunday morning. Anyway, sidebar. So
this is as a resource. This podcast is also a resource to get out some of the...
Actually, this is probably more pastoral
church
kid.
Angst. Yeah,
this is our pastor-kid counseling coming out. Like, we're getting rid of the angst. So anyway, all that to say is I often will get home on a Sunday afternoon and we'll have lunch, and I'll mow my grass on Sunday. And I, no lie, I have been rebuked about that. Not often and not a ton, but enough of people, saying like, wow, way to work on the Sabbath, way to, whatever. It's like, whoa, time out.
Yeah.
I'm not a landscaper. I don't mow for a living. This isn't work. That's so relaxing to me.
Yeah.
That's a huge, genuine unplug. I put in my AirPods. I put on music or a podcast. I get on my riding mower and I just mow the grass in the sun. It is so filling and restful for my mind and my soul. I just got done preaching or whatever. Yeah. That's rest.
Yeah.
Now that's honoring the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of this has to do with is, again, let's go back to what the Bible says, to rest and make it holy, make it different.
Yeah.
Make it separate from all the other days.
Yeah. Yeah. I that's where I think the word like intentionality comes into play. Like it really is just not like, oh, I took a nap today, there it is. It's like, no, there was like actually time set aside, or what you're doing, you are actually focusing on and making it a restful, different thing. I think about for us, like a lot of Sunday nights will go to my brother's in-laws and do like a family dinner. And I began to intentionally leave my phone in the car. So for the hour or two that we were there at this dinner, just spending time with family and friends, it's like, I'm there. Like it is, and it's wild. Do that sometime. Go to some event or some hangout and don't have your phone on you. Like if that's a normal thing, because you very quickly realize everyone's just on their phone all the time.
Yeah.
But B, there is something special about like, man, I'm actually kind of engaging in this conversation more, or I'm actually genuinely interested in what this person is saying. And there's something that's really refreshing
Yeah.
and restful to it. And a lot of times that would carry over into then some people coming to our house and watching a movie. And so like it was just so much time spent in really beneficial community, like intentional community. And there was a lot of rest that then would carry over Sunday night into Monday morning and waking up slow. And, for us, like a lot of times Mondays are a day off in the pastoral world and whatnot. And that's just that whole morning is spent with family and making breakfast with my kids and trying to keep the phone away. And trying to keep some of that stuff away, and not always perfect, not sitting here saying this happens every time, but that is a very different period or life moment in life than the rest of the week.
Yep.
And the rest of the time.
Which is a great identifier.
Yeah.
If you're looking for ways, like, well, I don't know, did I do it right or not? Well, that's a great identifier. Did I make this day different?
Yeah.
Is it different than the other days of the week? So you asked that question about honey-do lists. I don't know. I mean, honey-do lists. I mean, maybe this is a different day because you're doing what your wife asked you to do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It makes it different.
That's a good point.
But so I'm not telling you don't go, fix the knob on the cabinets or something. But I think what you're saying is great. That's a very different rhythm of your day.
Yeah.
That you're putting things aside and allowing, just you to be with your family, your friends, whatever.
Yeah. 100%.
I think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I think make it different.
Yeah.
Make it restful. So do something to recharge your batteries.
Yeah. Yeah. That word recharge, reset, whatever you kind of want to put to it. But there's my wife would say, and she's pretty wise in this area in my opinion, but like it's a full like maybe exhale is almost the experience. I feel like all week is like this building and the huffing and puffing. You're just kind of going and going and going. And so it's finding that moment. It's like an actual like that happens. And so yeah, recharge is really good. I think reset is really good. For you then, maybe back to the biblical side of Sabbath and rest, where do we see it in the New Testament? We kind of mentioned that Jesus, as he kind of shows up on the scene, he starts to talk more to the heart of the matter compared to the letter of the law. We kind of mentioned earlier, he talks about if you're tired or rest, like come to me. But it's not just an Old Testament thing.
No, not at all. No, not at all.
Yeah.
In fact, it is Jesus who says, he says in the book of, make sure I get it right here. Caught a lot of flack for sure through it all. But there's the moment where he does heal somebody on the Sabbath. And he's catching a lot of flack. He says it's not wrong to do good on the Sabbath. And so he establishes there that it's not about the laws. But then he says, you quoted earlier, he says, come to me, all you who are weary. I'll give you rest for your soul.
Yeah.
Give me your burdens. I'll give you rest for my soul. And so what we see in the New Testament, we see Jesus now saying, no, this is a day that's holy, but it's not legalism.
Yeah.
It's not something you have to do, but it's something there. So I think that's the other question is, okay, so we identify the Sabbath or Sunday as our Sabbath in our modern culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's our rhythm. That's honoring to God. We've chosen a day to do this. So if I have to ask, did I make it restful? If I have to ask, did I make it different? I think the fair question that must be asked also is, did I make it holy?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not just talking about, did I make it just different? Did I set it apart for God?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the heart of what Jesus is getting at, is that, because again, I'm not here to abolish the law.
Yep.
Now, he was here to abolish the Jewish laws, the nonsense, but he wasn't here to abolish the law of God, the law of Moses, what was given, keep the Sabbath holy. So that's the other side of that coin of, did I make it holy?
Yeah.
Did I do something today to make sure that this is a day where I'm focusing on God?
Mm. Yeah. And I believe that's where some of that silent solitude, meditation, some of those things come into play, like the intentionality of, and we'll talk about, the spiritual discipline of prayer in a later episode, but like, am I really listening? You know, there's a thing called like listening prayer, which is just to say, basically just ask a question and then just to sit there in silence, like, and just listen and just let it be. Did maybe before you lay your head down on your pillow at night, did you spend some time saying thanks to God for this? Is there a, I'll use the word, but like mindfulness in the sense of, are you mindful of, man, this is a blessing that I'm getting to do this or experience this right now. I think some of those things are really easy, but probably missed moments that can make it holy. I don't know, for you, is there some way that you see that day being a holy set apart? Is it, if it's a Sunday is your Sabbath, did you spend some time in the Word, maybe at a church service or like, in that sense? But
I think it's, again, trying to stay away from making it too much of a, like, well, here's your options that you choose from. Do one of these three. I think it's like, okay, on your Sabbath, what did I do today to make it about God? Almost like to give God his day. And so I was thinking about, in our family, birthdays are a big deal. Not that we necessarily throw a huge bash all the time, but it's a big different thing that when it's your birthday, you're exempt from everything. You don't have to cook, do dishes, clean, make your bed. You don't have to do anything on your birthday. It's your day. You get to choose the meal. You get to choose the activities. It's a day where everything about today, it's all your day. It's all you. And that's very cool. It's an honoring time. And so we all look forward to our birthdays and we have fun with it. And so I think of it through that filter of like, okay, how did I make this God's day? I think that's where the miss happens. I think a lot of times people, they see Sunday as a great day to make it their day. My day. I'm not harping saying you have to go to church. I'm not saying like, because again, but I do believe this. Church is a big deal on Sundays. Attending big corporate gathering, worshiping. It's something we're getting ready to start the book of Acts on Sunday mornings. We're going to see that's a big deal. They gather together for worship and to learn, to encourage each other, to be together in fellowship. Obviously, church attendance has really changed a lot over the last decade, particularly over the last 3 years. There's a lot more comfort with the digital platforms. We provide a lot of the digital platforms. But I think our heart behind offering the digital options is out of necessity, not convenience as much. And I think that we have really accidentally provided a much more convenient Jesus to follow. And I think that there's that mentality of like, you know what? Yeah, let's go. It's a beautiful day. Let's go jump on that boat, and we catch church service tonight. We can watch it later. If you did that last week, I'm not sad at you. You know, we're not saying that at all. More power to you. It's a heart thing.
That's good.
What'd you do today to make this God's day? Is God going to bed like I would on my birthday? Like, man, that was a good birthday. I felt honored today. Is God like, good job, you honored me today? Or did you honor yourself today? At God's expense.
That's good. And that's that's even just thinking in my own life, like that is a question worth asking probably every day. But I do really think in that moment of rest and in that day that you're trying to Sabbath or, again, reset, whatever it is, like starting it out with and maybe ending it for sure, asking like, man, was God glorified in this? Was he honored in this? Was there at least something that pointed to him? Or that's so good.
Something that was different. Something that was restful. And something that made it God's day. I think if you can find your way into those three areas, I think you're going to be pretty good at honoring God, and through that finding rest. You know, and
it's not a one size fits all.
No,
I think that's a really, because when my wife and I first started to really take Sabbath seriously, the things that she had read was like, okay, she put this, we'd wake up in the morning and she would grab all our phones and she'd hide them away in the house somewhere. And it was like, you're going to read this and you're going to do this. And it was like, it was a very regimented, basically type mentality, because that's the example she had seen. And for her, she was really excited about that. For me, I loathed every minute of it. And I would honestly finish a lot of the days being like, I felt like I was grounded all day.
Yeah.
There's nothing restful. And we've talked about this off air. This isn't me just airing dirty laundry. But like,
she's going to listen to this and be like, oh, you're done.
Yeah.
It's on.
This is my last episode, guys. But there was something to finding, again, something that was different.
Yeah.
Something that I could make it about God. There was some rest involved.
And what's restful to you may not be restful to someone else.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's not one size fits all.
Exactly.
And I think it's a super realistic understanding we need.
Yeah, and that's really what it came down to was, I did put the phone away, and we did some of that, but it wasn't as like intense, or it wasn't as for her. She would do this or do these 2 or 3 things, and like I shared, like I'd just lace up my tennis shoes and just kind of go for a walk run, like just something by myself, like just go do that, or I'm gonna like I said, I'm gonna make breakfast or do something that's gonna just take my time and really spend it enjoying something that was refreshing, that I don't get to wake up every morning and make breakfast with my kids and and things like that. So finding those little things that are special. And so, the one size fits all, or even this idea of it can't change, like that's not true either. Like there's probably a season, like you can't mow in the winter, like, and I don't know if snow blowing's that enjoyable.
Snow blowing is in no way, shape, or form restful or enjoyable. Nothing.
So for that season, what you find restful and how you rest, it probably does shift. And so again, this idea of disciplines, we don't want to become these unsavory or bad habits,
correct?
Almost, or these things that you're not looking forward to. Like, this really should be something that your week is like building towards.
Yeah.
That idea of like, man, I'm gonna get that break.
Yeah.
And
because if you view it the other way, it's almost like a formula. If you do these 3 steps, then you'll be holy, or you'll be. That's not what we're getting at all. All right, so we've really hammered home Sabbath. But rest is a bigger topic. Maybe what are some other, from a spiritual disciplines way, what are some other disciplines that you have found that bring you rest through the course of your week?
A lot of them I think will play into probably bigger conversations in later episodes, but my day is different when I start my morning out in devotional. And I know for some it's here, there, and I've spent, I'll be 33 here in a month or so. Like, I've spent 32.11 years of my life trying to, like, what does it mean for me to spend some time in devotion? And I've learned it's the last 2 years, it really has been, I have a little thing I follow on YouTube. There's anywhere from 9 to 12-minute videos, and it just slowly walks through a book of the Bible. And so I have my Bible, a notebook, I have a highlighter, a pen, throw in the AirPods, and it's like there's a noticeable difference when I start in that moment.
Good.
And it's alone at the table, first thing in the morning. Like, it is a time that I have set apart to give to God. And that to me is almost like a little moment of rest every day.
Yep.
Right.
Good.
So that's a huge one. I don't know for you if there's I'm
a morning person too, so that's a big one. I think a discipline I've had to create over time to really be sustainable is that when I leave work, I leave work.
Yeah.
Very difficult as a pastor because we are on call for sure for emergencies. But at the same time, despite what some people may think, we don't have a cot in the back of our office. We're not here 24/7.
Yeah.
We need that break. And so, but a lot of times we'll go home and get home and flip, maybe sit on the couch, but open the laptop and get to work, and that's not restful. And so there was a time where I felt like, man, but I'm getting ahead. That's good for me. It's really good. And I think at the end of the day, I was probably misunderstanding busyness as what makes me important.
Yeah.
And just, it was a total miscue.
Yeah.
So that's one discipline. It's like I've really learned I can really go unplug. At first, it felt like I'm being very irresponsible and very apathetic. It's like, no, that's not it at all.
Yeah.
I need my evening rest. I know my limits. I need to go home and just chill. Doesn't mean I don't come back, several times a week for meetings or appointments, but
Sure.
when I get home, I'm home. I just want to be there for that. So I think that's been a big part of it. I think being rested is probably something we all pursue, and a lot of it has to do with sleep.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I was reading some studies not too long ago that more and more adults, as they get older, they sleep less and less and less.
Mm.
But doctors will tell you that they're actually finding we need more sleep than they originally thought.
Yeah.
Like my doctor at my last physical mentioned to me that my doctor asked if I was getting enough rest. I'm like, yeah, and the doctor was like, well, it's now recommended 9 hours a night. 9 hours.
Sounds incredible.
Sounds incredible, but I don't know the last time I slept for 9 hours. Like,
Yeah.
that my body doesn't do that. So then I have to ask, well, why? Well, typically for me, I wake up early. My mind starts racing over what I have to do.
Mm.
I start thinking about, all right, my to-do list, my accomplishments for the day, what do I got to get done?
Yeah.
Or it's worries and anxieties.
Mm.
And my mind begins to race down those paths. Both of those really come back to what is the source of it, and that is where am I putting my trust and my faith?
Mm.
And so I have found that even in the middle of the night when I'm needing my rest, and so this would be a discipline. It used to be I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd maybe let some worries or stresses kind of get on my mind and make me toss and turn. And I used to try and pray against those, which I should.
Yeah.
But it didn't work. Like, it didn't help me stop thinking about them.
Mm.
So I don't know if I read this somewhere or how I got onto this path, but a couple of years ago, I decided when I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm stressing about something about my life, I'm going to instantly start praying for other people.
Yeah.
And so it's not unusual. If I tell you I've prayed for you, I probably prayed for you at 3:30 in the morning or at 4 in the morning.
Wow.
Because I'll wake up and I'll toss and turn and I'll recognize that it's me.
Yeah.
And again, this doesn't work for everybody. For me, man, that instantly calms my heart, calms my mind, and I go back to sleep.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of something I've been doing, and it's like, wow, this has been really cool for my soul. So now I've got rest for my soul, rest for my mind, rest for my body.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, because I do think in a lot of ways, like the worry, the anxiety, like that is probably one of the biggest hindrances probably for people who are trying to rest.
Mm-hmm.
Is I just can't slow my mind down. I can't slow down. I can't stop. And that is that idea of, I think there's a desire in a lot of us to have control and to fix and to feel like we're important if we care in certain ways. And man, it's, again, all this is probably way easier said than done, but just those little things that you can begin to implement, like the bigger payoff. And that's ultimately like what these are. These spiritual disciplines are really smaller things that you can just add into your life that the payoff is a deeper connection and relationship with Christ. And that's the goal.
That is the goal.
That should be the goal.
Yeah.
So,
well, hey, we greatly appreciate you spending this time with us. We hope maybe there was something that we discussed today that is something for you, something that will inspire you, that will help you, just again as a resource, just kind of help us all along the way as we are working so hard to just be followers of Jesus, being his disciples, knowing him more every day, learning more every day, and then through these spiritual disciplines, being intentional about how we go about doing that.
Yeah.
So anyway, we hope you have a restful rest of your week. Maybe there's a couple things you get to apply here. And other than that, we'll be back next week. We'll continue down this path a little bit and continue to have these conversations. So thanks for being with Andrew and Chris on the Bayview Podcast, and we'll see you next time around.